Welcome to Bible Essentials. My name is Sarah Ruff. We are reading Matthew chapter 23 today, and how I hope you are gleaning something from this study. If I can just glean anything from a sermon or anything, I'm always so thrilled. So I'm hoping at least one thing through these chapters you can glean and think about, pray over. I just hope you're enjoying it as much as I am, I guess. All right, so let's begin Matthew chapter 23. Let's do it. When Jesus spoke to the crowds and to his disciples. So I always like to make mention of who Jesus is talking to, who is his audience, because it makes so much more sense of what he is saying. So he's talking to a crowd of people as well as his disciples, saying, "The scribes and the Pharisees have seated themselves in the chair of Moses," meaning they have set themselves in the leadership position as Moses. "Therefore, all that they tell you, do and observe, but do not do according to their deeds." Why? "For they say things and do not do them." Sit on that a minute. Jesus said to the crowds and his disciples, yep, the scribes and the Pharisees, they've seated themselves in the chair of Moses as your leaders. And so listen to them. Do what they say, but don't do what they do, because they don't do what they say. All right. Verse 4, "They tie up heavy burdens and lay them on men's shoulders, but they themselves are unwilling to move them with so much as a finger. But they do all their deeds." Why? Why do they do all their deeds? "To be noticed by men, for they broaden their phylacteries and lengthen the tassels on their garments. They love the place of honor at banquets and the chief seats in the synagogues, and respectful greetings in the marketplaces, and being called rabbi by men. But do not be called rabbi, for one is your teacher, and you are all brothers. Do not call anyone on earth your father, for one is your Father who is in heaven. Do not be called leaders, for one is your leader, that is Christ. But the greatest among you the crowds, you the disciples, shall be your servant." And that is spoken of so differently from the Pharisees. I mean, they were just almighty to be seen, praying long prayers. But he goes, no, the greatest is truly those who are serving. "Whoever exalts himself shall be humbled, and whoever humbles himself shall be exalted." Here we go. Verse 13, here's our first woe. "But woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, you hypocrites, because you shut off the kingdom of heaven from people, for you did not enter yourselves, nor do you allow those who are entering to go in. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, you hypocrites, because you devour widows' houses, and not for pretense, and for a pretense, you make long prayers. Therefore, what are they going to receive? Greater condemnation, greater wrath. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, because you travel around on sea and land to make one proselyte. And when he becomes one, you make him twice as much a son of hell as yourselves. Woe to you, blind guides, who say, whoever swears by the temple, that is nothing, but whoever swears by the gold of the temple, now he's obligated to that. Meaning, if you swear by the temple, that's no big deal. But if you swear by the gold, oh, you better hold up. You better give your gold. You fools and blind men, which is more important, the gold or the temple that sanctified the gold? And whoever swears by the altar, that is nothing, but whoever swears by the offering on it, he is obligated. Again, if you swear by the altar, that's no big deal. But if you swear by what you're bringing to the altar, your sacrifice, oh, you better do that. You better bring your sacrifices, just like it's more important to bring your money. You blind men, which is more important, the offering or the altar that sacrifices the offering? Therefore, whoever swears by the altar swears by both the altar and everything on it. And whoever swears by the temple swears by both the temple and by him who dwells in it. And whoever swears by heaven swears by the throne of God and by him who sits on it. I mean, even what they were holding, what they were teaching and holding most important was not. Jesus is teaching the opposite. Verse 23, woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you tithe mint and dill and cumin and have neglected the weightier provisions of the law, which is that justice and mercy and faithfulness. Justice. They were neglecting justice. They were neglecting mercy. They were neglecting faithfulness. But these are the things you should have done without neglecting the others, without neglecting tithing the mint and the dill and the cumin. You blind guides, they're blind guides leading the nation of Israel, the blind, who strain out a gnat, but they swallow a camel. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, you hypocrites, for you clean the outside of the cup of the dish, but inside, listen, they are full of robbery and self-indulgence. The outside looks clean, but the inside is robbery and self-indulgence. You blind Pharisee, first clean the inside of the cup of the dish so that the outside of it may be clean as well. Clean your inside first, then the outside will be clean as well. Verse 27, this is your seventh woe to the scribes and Pharisees, you hypocrites, for you are like whitewashed tombs, which on the outside appear beautiful. You've been to the graves where they've got tombs, especially in foreign countries, they're bright and they're white and they're beautiful. He goes, yeah, you're like whitewashed tombs. The outside looks beautiful, but the inside are full of dead man's bones and all uncleanliness. So you too, outwardly, and he tells us exactly what this means. He said, so you too outwardly appear righteous to men, but inwardly you are full of hypocrisy and lawlessness. Jesus knows what's really going on behind the closed doors, what's really going on in their hearts. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, you hypocrites, for you build the tombs of the prophets and adorn the monuments of the righteous. So they build the tombs of the prophets and they adorn the monuments of the righteous and say, listen to what they say, if we had been living in the days of our fathers, we would not have been partakers with them in shedding the blood of the prophets. They said, oh, if we'd been living in the times of our fathers, we wouldn't have taken the lives of the prophets. So listen to what Jesus says. So you testify against yourselves that you are sons of those who murdered the prophets. So you fess up. You recognize that you are sons of those who killed the prophets. Listen, fill up then the measure of guilt of your fathers, you serpents, you brood of vipers. That literally means, I've said this before, you offspring of the poisonous snake. How will you escape the sentence of hell? Meaning, how are you going to escape the sentence of hell? You have been sentenced to hell. How are you going to escape it? Therefore, because of what I have said, behold, I am sending you prophets and wise men and scribes. Some of them you will kill and crucify, and some of them you are scourged in your synagogue and persecute them from city to city, so that upon you may fall the guilt of all the righteous blood shed on earth, from the blood of righteous Abel to the blood of Zechariah the son of Barchiah, for whom you murdered between the temple and the altar. Truly I say to you, all these things will come upon you this generation. So they were so I mean, they were hypocrites. You hear what Jesus said about them. The outside looked good. They were saying all the right things, but the inside was wrong. They were lawlessness. It goes back to, I keep referring back to this study, our 1st, 2nd, and 3rd John study. When John says, if you say you have fellowship with God, yet you are walking in darkness, you're lying. You really don't have fellowship with God. And that's exactly, these Pharisees thought they were the most religious, that they were going to heaven. But they were lawlessness. They were practicing, they were living in sin. On the outside, it looked good. In the inside, they were living in sin. Do y'all see that? Verse 37, let me finish this out. Jerusalem, Jerusalem, who kills the prophets and stones those who are sent to her. How often I wanted to gather your children together, the way a hen gathers her chicks under her wings, and you were unwilling. Behold, listen, look. Jesus is saying, pay attention. Your house is being left to you desolate. Jerusalem, your house, the temple, the land is going to be left to you desolate, meaning no Jews in it. For I say to you, from now on, you will not see me until you say, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. More or less, he's saying, you're not going to see me until you can see me. And if you've done my Revelation study, you know when that is. Paul talks about it in Romans, that he will save all the Jews who are living in the end when Christ comes the second time to save them on his white horse. Wow. Go back and reread that chapter. Look at what the Pharisees were doing, how they were living their life. And oh, might we learn and glean from that. All right, next week, Matthew chapter 24, it is the most, I believe, in this day and age, the most important chapter in your Bible. I promise you, well, I can't say promise, but in a class of 20 women, not one of them had ever heard their preacher ever talk about it. And I, in my 40 years, have never heard a preacher preach on Matthew chapter 24. What is it? What is it about? You can't miss it. So subscribe, and I'll see you later.